Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dorsey Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio chapter of the American Planning Association, and I am your webcast moderator. Today, we will hear the presentation, What are they teaching those planning students? The state of accreditation of planning programs. For any questions that you have, you can type those in the Q&A box. If they're content questions or technical questions, just type them all in. We'll get to your content questions at the end of the presentation during the Q&A, but I will keep a lookout if you're having technical issues to try to assist you. On your screen is a list of our sponsoring APA chapters and divisions for 2023. Thanks to all those participating sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free to members. Today, we're sponsored by the Kansas chapter of APA, and you'll hear a little bit more from Bonnie in a moment. Upcoming webcasts. These are our next 3 webcasts. You can register for these in all of our upcoming sessions by heading over to our website, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. Today's session is worth 1.5 CM credits. Log those credits by heading over to planning.org. You can log into your My APA account, and from there you can search either by today's title or event number. Both of those can be found again on our website, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. If you're on social media, be sure to like us on Facebook. That's where I post any important date or time changes, when new sessions are available for you to register for, and a reminder of our upcoming Friday session. Next, we record all of our sessions and we post them onto our YouTube channel. So head over to YouTube, type in Planning Webcast, will pop up along with our well over 400 session recordings, all available for free. So if you subscribe to our channel, you get notified when new sessions are up and available for you to view. So again, if you have any questions, type those into the Q&A box. We'll get to them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie Johnson to kick things off. Bonnie.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. I'm going to share my screen. So, Christine's going to stop sharing. So now I can share. All right, so hopefully you see a slideshow.
Looks good.
All righty. Well, welcome everybody. So we're going to be talking about accreditation of planning programs, letting you know what that is and what the expectations are for planning students today. And you will really see how that academia, planning practice, and accreditation are all coming together to ensure that our profession is of a high quality and keeps up to date. So that's our main goal with our presentation today. And so I'm Bonnie Johnson. I am on the Planning Accreditation Board. Joining us also is Linda Tatum, also on the Planning Accreditation Board. And then one of our 2 amazing Planning Accreditation Board staff, Jacqueline Haid, is with us as well. And so each one of us will present different parts of the presentation, and away we will go. All right, so our agenda or our learning objectives for this session are, we're going to start off with a question of what are you interested in? What is planning accreditation? Who is accredited? Why accreditation? What are the standards? What does the data show? And then at the end, we'll ask you another question. What do you think of the standards? So here's our first question, and then Christine is going to turn on so that you can actually participate in this question. So our first question is, what is your interest in this topic? I hire and manage new planners. I am interested in what new topics are being covered in school. I wonder how I match up to today's standards. I'm an academic and want to know more about accreditation. Maybe you're a professional development officer and want to know about accreditation. I want to know how I can be involved with accreditation. You can. I just need some AICP credits. Or last, I don't understand these kids today. So,
all right, everyone, go ahead and type those
go
in. If you
ahead
are on a
and
mobile
vote.
device, sometimes mobile devices don't allow the pop-up poll. So apologies if you're on a mobile device and you don't see it pop up, but I'll give it another few moments here. And then we'll share the results. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share our results. Bonnie, can you see the results?
Oh, yes. Okay. So our big one is interested in what topics are being covered. Linda's really going to cover that well. And then you're hiring and managing new planners. So you might be interested in knowing which schools graduate accredited planners. Yeah, need some AICP credits. Me too.
Mhm.
And then a couple of you did I don't understand these kids today. So great. Thank you so much. We're going to cover all of those things. And we're so glad you're here today. So we're going to start off with what the heck is this Planning Accreditation Board? And Jacqueline is going to take over.
Thank you, Bonnie. This is a picture of our current board members at our last meeting. The Planning Accreditation Board, commonly referred to as PAB, accredits university programs in North America, leading to bachelor's and master's degrees in planning. PAB standards are developed with input from the stakeholders in the planning community and our sponsoring organizations. We have 3 sponsors, and they are the American Planning Association, the American Institute of Certified Planners, and the Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning. In addition to accrediting planning programs, PAB mentors programs to further academic excellence in professional education, collects and provides data on the state of planning education, and strengthens professional education in partnership with its sponsors. Through these connections, the PAB seeks to strengthen links between planning practice and the academy. Next slide. The Planning Accreditation Board's mission is to promote excellence among planning programs and ensure high-quality education for future urban planners. In furtherance of its mission, PAB embraces 5 core values: stewardship, the preserving of the knowledge base of the urban planning profession with which the PAB has entrusted, and supporting the innovations that enhance this knowledge base over time. Collaboration in advancing the dialogue and partnerships between the academic and practitioner communities. Communication in articulating the value of an accredited urban planning education to students and the communities they will study and serve. Integrity in maintaining a commitment to fairness, transparency, consistency, and state-of-the-art accreditation practices. And leadership in providing and sharing and encouraging instructional innovation. Next slide. As I mentioned, PAB has 3 sponsors, but PAB is an independent organization with its own staff and board of directors. PAB was established in 1984, and it is maintained through a partnership between these 3 organizations. The Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning represents planning education programs. The American Institute of Certified Planners represents professionals with credentials in planning practice. And the American Planning Association represents practitioners, citizens, and elected officials associated with planning. As sponsoring organizations, APA, AICP, and ACSP support the Planning Accreditation Board by appointing members to our 8-person board, provide funds for our organization, and recruit and nominate experienced people such as yourselves to our site visitor pool. Here on this slide is a breakdown of the board members that are appointed by our sponsors. APA appoints 1 public member, AICP appoints 3 planning practitioners, ACSP appoints 3 planning educators and 1 higher education administrator. Next slide. PAB and its sponsors acknowledge that the Planning Accreditation Board must have autonomy to ensure that its professional accreditation functions are carried out independent of influence. PAB is ultimately responsible for establishing standards for accreditation of educational programs for planners at the undergraduate and graduate levels, establishing policies and procedures to ensure that educational programs comply with those standards, and conducting accreditation reviews in accordance with the standards, policies, and procedures. The PAB standards are developed in consultation with our sponsoring organizations, as well as with input from all of our stakeholders, planning programs, students, alumni, and the planning profession. The Planning Accreditation Board is funded by those three organizations. ACSP provides funding through an annual fee that is paid by the accredited programs, while APA and AICP each provide PAB with a grant revenue based on the number of institutions with accredited programs. Next slide. On the PAB website, there is a searchable list of all programs that have ever been accredited by the Planning Accreditation Board. The list includes the state, the school, the degree name, and the dates the program was or is accredited. So if you're unsure if you've graduated from an accredited planning program, head over to our website and you can search and see if your graduation date falls within the dates of accreditation. Currently, there are 78 accredited master's programs, 16 accredited bachelor programs at 82 North American universities. Next slide. This is a breakdown where it shows how they are displaced throughout the country. We do have one in Puerto Rico and one in Canada. Next slide.
Hi, as Bonnie said at the top of the program, I'm Linda Tatum. I've been a practicing planner for close to 30 years, and for about 15 of those years, I've been a site visitor for the Planning Accreditation Board. So a lot of what I'll be talking about today is from that perspective. So we'll start with the topic of the value of accreditation. So there are two primary benefits of accreditation. One, it promotes excellence in planning programs, and it does that by sharing information, data, and best practices. And it also ensures a high quality education for future practicing planners. And in this segment, I'll be talking about the value of accreditation from these perspectives, but I'll also include a high level overview of the Planning Accreditation Board standards and talk a little bit about the accreditation process and the site visit. Next slide. So what do we do and why? So I'll be speaking somewhat from the practitioner point of view here, but some of the main benefits of accreditation is that it assures quality. It provides assurance that the program's graduates are well prepared for practice and that they have the necessary skills and knowledge to effectively practice in the profession in any sector, whether it's public, private, or nonprofit. And how it does this is through the standards that are related to faculty size at the program, scholarship and research activities, and very specifically involvement with planning practice and their outreach and their collaborating and working in the community to assure that planners who attend accredited programs are learning from active scholars and engaged educators. And lastly, it provides a really effective external perspective on the program, which includes an evaluation process that identifies for the program areas of opportunity and opportunities for further continuous improvement. So related to the other value is that accreditation connects education to practice. And it does this by encouraging very direct collaboration between academics and the practice of planning through the standards that emphasize faculty service directly in the community and through partnerships between the programs and the local practicing planners and planning organizations in the community. And another major benefit of connecting education to practice is that when a planner graduates from an accredited program, they're eligible for AICP candidacy immediately upon their graduation. So the third area in which accreditation matters is that it enhances the visibility of planning as a practice and planning as a profession. And in a sense, accreditation is a mark of distinction for the profession in that it demonstrates the rigors of the knowledge and practice in planning programs. And many universities and programs, they cite that the reason they pursue accreditation is because it gives the program higher visibility, and it also helps them to attract students to the program. And from the recruitment perspective, it's really valuable because of the connections to both APA, AICP, and the fact that the PAB accreditation it gives a stamp of approval to a program from the profession. And as an employer in the practice of planning, I will say that when I'm looking for new planners, all things being equal between candidates, I will always select the planner that has AICP certification and or a planner who has attended an accredited program. In essence, you know what you're getting because you know the rigor of the program if they have PAB accreditation. And this is beneficial from the perspective of a student. If they've attended an accredited program, they can market and highlight their skills and knowledge compared to those who didn't attend an accredited program. And Bonnie will talk a little bit more about the value of accreditation from the academic perspective. Bonnie?
Yeah, thank you, Linda. So you perhaps have figured out now that you know how the board is set up, that Linda is an AICP appointed member of the board, and I'm an ACSP, Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning appointee. I've also been a practitioner before I came back to school and got my PhD. And I'm also the Kansas APA chapter professional development officer. So I'm paying attention to accreditation from all sorts of different angles. So this is just to give you a sense of accreditation within higher education. Institutions, colleges, and universities as whole entities are also accredited. So there's lots of different accreditors, regional, programmatic, and specialized. And accreditation can be mandatory or voluntary, like what is with the Planning Accreditation Board. So on the left of your screen, the 5 institutional or regional accreditors cover 5 different geographic regions of the US, and they're accrediting schools and colleges. Institutional accreditation is mandatory, and it's tied to student financial aid. So if a school or a university isn't accredited by one of these regional accreditors, the students cannot get the federally funded financial aid. Also, it influences whether those schools can get federal grants, things like that. So it's speaking as someone at one of those universities, it is very important, and our provost and chancellor remind us of that all the time. The other thing that's nice about a planning program that is accredited through the Planning Accreditation Board is because if your university is also has to be accredited, your higher ups will be looking to your programs to do some sort of assessment for accreditation. So if you're not accredited, if you're a planning school and you're not accredited by PAB, you're still going to have to do something to meet these regional accreditation standards. But from an academic point of view, what's nice about PAB is, at least here at the University of Kansas, we can tell the provost office, hey, look, we're already accredited by our professional organization, and thus we've done all of the self-assessment and tracking and all of that. And it's tied to our profession. It's not just some sort of generic accreditation. So that's nice about being an accredited program is you can assure higher ups that no, we really have thought about this. So other specialized or professional accreditors, they span a variety of fields like architecture, athletic training, public health, medical education, all of that. And then of course, there's an accreditor for accreditation programs, of course. So all of these accreditors are reviewed and recognized by national bodies, either the Council for Higher Education Accreditation, known as CHIA, or the U.S. Department of Education, or both. The Planning Accreditation Board is recognized by CHIA and must adhere to its recognition policy. And I know the PAB just went through their accreditation with CHIA, and so they know all about being on both sides of the accreditation formula. And then as the Kansas APA chapter professional development officer, I'm always helping people become AICP. And in the planning AICP workbook and their worksheet, they have about how much professional planning experience you need to become AICP. And if you graduate with a master's degree or a doctoral degree in planning from a program accredited by PAB, you only need 2 years of professional planning experience before you can officially become AICP. That is after you've passed the exam. So you can see on the chart where it takes more years of experience if you aren't graduated from an accredited program, and so on. I think that's what I wanted to cover there. And so back to Linda with some more details.
Okay. In this slide, we'll talk a little bit about the PAB standards and criteria, because these are fundamentally the baseline for how PAB assesses the programs. And the report that the program provides to the board must demonstrate how each of these standards and criteria are met. So I will walk through these really briefly. The criteria, strategic planning, that is a document, a 5 to 7 year document that the program produces that must demonstrate that there is a clear vision, mission, and goal for the program, as well as how the program will assess student learning as they go through the curriculum. It also must address and talk about student quality and student diversity in the program. As fundamentally, it also must provide evidence of the quality and the diversity of the faculty. And we'll talk a little bit more detail about the curriculum, and it must demonstrate how the curriculum actually enables students or provides students fundamental knowledge and skills for the practice of planning. And lastly, the program has to demonstrate that they have sufficient autonomy to implement their strategic plan. So that's those are the 5 categories of the standards, and each of the standards has a whole series of criteria which you can take a look at on the website. So I'll talk a little bit about the fundamental components of the curriculum that PAB is looking for. One is general planning knowledge, and in essence what we're looking for and what the program must demonstrate is that there is a comprehensive representation of the ideas and concepts that the planner needs to understand and able to be effective in practice. And this includes appropriate perspectives from planning history, social science, design, and other allied fields that relate to and collaborate with students in the practice of planning. So I'll talk a little bit more about the general planning knowledge and what that means. And I'm going to just walk through these very briefly just to give you an idea, because we could probably spend a whole session on just these criteria. So the first one is just the purpose and the meaning of planning. Why is it that we do planning? The second is planning theory. It needs to ground the understanding of planning in the behaviors and the structures that are available to planners to actually bring about sound planning outcomes. Planning law, that one is pretty straightforward, just understanding the legal context in which planners will practice. We need to understand the history of planning, how it's grown and developed over time through different models of planning and different approaches to planners, and how it relates to different over time and across different spaces in the practice. Number 5 is the future. The program has to talk about how planning and the relationships of current planning to past practices, the present, and also how the future, so that it covers potential methods for how we design and practice planning to influence the future. And number 6 is global dimensions of planning. The program has to cover how different cultures and different approaches are different in different communities and across different world regions. So that's a little bit about the general planning knowledge and just understanding the context in which we practice. Very specifically, if you're an employer, you want to know what kind of skills planners have or what they get out of the planning program. So I'll cover those briefly. Also, essentially, research. The program needs to demonstrate that the planner has the tools for assessing, compiling, and analyzing ideas and information, data from prior practice, from scholarship, and from either primary or secondary sources. Number 2, communication skills. They have to demonstrate that their curriculum covers written, oral, and graphic presentation and communication skills, so that what they're presenting to the public, to their employers, or to the client are clear, accurate, compelling, not just in the written information, but in the graphics and also in the maps that may be used as a part of a presentation. Number 3, qualitative and quantitative methods. Those are different tools and approaches for how you collect data, analyze data, and do modeling, forecasting, and policy analysis. Number 4 is how the fundamental skills to actually create a plan, to develop a plan and create it, and also importantly, how you implement the plan. So this involves using tools for sound plan formulation, as well as adoption and implementation of the plans that they create. Number 5 is planning methods. These are the fun ones. They're different tools for how you engage the community that you're working in, how you engage the stakeholders, residents, all different stakeholder segments of the community, and also very importantly, cultural competencies and working in diverse communities. And the last of these skill sets is leadership. We need to make sure that the planners are taught or equipped with tools to make strategic decision making, team building, and also how you encourage and motivate communities in terms of engaging in the planning process. And the third component of that core curriculum must be values and ethics. And as you probably as most of you, I assume, are AICP or APA members and potentially AICP, it essentially talks about the key issues related to planning ethics and how we operate in a democratic society. One part of those is professional ethics, and those are outlined in the AICP Code of Ethics, as well as in the APA's ethical principles. The second, and this criteria has been added in the recently updated PAB standards, it's making sure that the program is addressing equity, diversity, and social justice. And these are key issues that emphasize the planner's role in expanding choice and opportunity for all persons in the community. The third is governance and participation. Again, understanding how planning and the practitioners interact with different roles in the society, with planning officials, appointed commissions and committees, and planning bodies, and stakeholders and other members of the community in planning for and implementing change. The fourth of these is sustainability and environmental quality. These are on everybody's radar now due to global warming and just looking at the impacts of the environment on and how it impacts planning, both the social and political factors that contribute to sustainable communities and the creation of a sustainable future. Fifth is growth and development. Of course, you have to look at the economics in the community, the infrastructure, social and cultural factors, and how it affects regional growth and change. And lastly, health and the built environment. Again, looking at how the health in the community affects the built environment. So I talked about all of these fundamental knowledges and knowledge and skills, as well as the values, but the really critical component of this is the program must demonstrate, again, in its strategic plan, a methodology that very specifically tells the PAB board how it will assess whether or not the students are learning these fundamental skills and knowledges. And those that assessment can be defined by the program. It could be in any number of ways through GPAs, graduation rates, AICP pass rates, but we're looking for how, even in some programs do a self-assessment by the students themselves, but we're looking to see that the program has a way or a tool to measure student learning outcomes. And those outcomes have to be measured over by a cohort over the review period between the accreditation period. Next slide. Okay, and this slide, the process, I'll give you a really high level overview of the accreditation process. It's similar to other processes, and it has 5 key steps. The first step is determining that a program desires to be an accredited program. So taking that step from non-accreditation to being considered for accreditation. And there are 5 preconditions to accreditation by the program that each of the program must demonstrate before they are invited then to go to the next step. And I'll talk about those briefly. They must have granted the degree that they're seeking accreditation for. They must have granted a degree in that particular program to at least 25 students. The program, the parent institution has to be accredited by an accrediting body recognized by TIA. And Jackie talked about that earlier. That's the Council for Higher Education Accreditation. The third criteria is that the program title and the degree must contain the word planning. And the fifth is that if it's an undergraduate program, the length of the program must be at least 4 years. And if it's a graduate degree program, it must be at least 2 years. And lastly, it's really important that the the degrees program, the primary focus of the program has to be preparing students to become practitioners in the planning profession. So if a program meets those criteria, they can apply, and the PAB would then go to the next step, which is to ask them to prepare a self-study report. And that self-study report contains all of those criteria that I talked about earlier. Review of their strategic plan, the skills and knowledges, including a detailed breakdown of the curriculum, the faculty, and the students. Step 3 is then they're ready for a site visit. And I'll talk about the site visit in a little bit more detail in the next slide. So I'll go on now to the site visit report. And that report is the document where they demonstrate their compliance with all of those standards. And the last step is once all of the report has been prepared, the site visit has been completed, that all of that data goes to the board, and the board then will consider the site visit team report. And they do this twice a year at both the APA National Conference and at the ACSP National Conference. And at these meetings, the board members review the self-study report prepared by the program, they review the site visit report, and they make a recommendation as to whether or not a program is accredited or not accredited. And if a program is granted accreditation, the board's recommendation includes a length of time for that accreditation, and that can range anywhere from 2 to 7 years. Next slide. So this graphic represents the makeup of the site visit team. It's essentially a peer review team that includes 2 educators, one of whom is the leader of the site team visit. And there's also a practitioner. And we get both, the idea is to make sure that the perspectives of both the practitioners and the educators are represented in the site visit. And you'll see on the right of the slide here, just kind of fundamentally the principal objectives of the site visit. It's to verify and confirm the information that's been provided in the site visit, but it's more importantly to gain information or evidence on the ground by not just reviewing the self-study report, but also by interviewing all of those who have some impact or influence or a role in the program. That includes everyone from the dean, the provost for the college, as well as the college president. We interview alumni, we interview the adjunct faculty. We also interview employers and APA members who collaborate with the program. Again, it's all intended to address how well the program is meeting the criteria. And another really good benefit of the site visit is that it builds bridges between the program and the community. And it's an opportunity for the program to highlight their relationships with the planning community through APA and APA's involvement. Next slide. So I know we have a pretty large attendance today, and I just want to use this as an opportunity to make a pitch to say you too can be a site visitor. We are always looking for site visit volunteers, and it's such a unique and very beneficial, and it's really a growth opportunity. So I want to just highlight some of the benefits of being a site visitor. By being a site visitor, you get to experience firsthand what that peer review process is involved with, what it looks like. You get to support and contribute to the education of future planners. And one of the greatest values I found in being a site visitor is just meeting colleagues that are practicing in different parts of the country. Because of the travels, you get to go to different universities across the country. You saw the map, and we're well represented throughout the country. And it's a really great way to get new ideas, to be on top of emerging trends, and really to share best practices, take them back home with you, but also to share them with your colleagues. So with that, I just would like to encourage each of you to consider being a site visitor. And I will turn it back over to Jacqueline.
Thank you, Linda. The planning accreditation standards require that accredited programs make certain performance information available to the public on the program's website regarding programmatic outcomes. Having consistent data reported across accredited programs allows prospective students to independently compare program outcomes. And in these key metrics areas, those include student achievement, which is determined by the program. They can show any unique strengths or learning outcomes that they have to highlight their program. The cost of tuition and fees for a full-time student for one academic year. Student retention and graduation rates. This includes the number of degrees awarded each year, the percentage of first-year students who return the second year for grad students, and the percentage of undergraduate students enrolled 1 year after they declare their major. For grad students, it's when they just return the following year. The percentage of master students graduating within 4 years is reported, and the percentage of bachelor students who graduate within 6 years, as some students are part-time. The AICP pass rate is required to be published as well, and that is the percentage of graduates who pass the exam based on those who take it, so that a student is not double counted if they do not pass. That is published for graduate students who take the exam within 3 years and for undergraduate students within 6 years. Lastly, the employment rate of all graduates in a planning related or other position within 1 year of graduation is also required. Next slide. Every year, PAB publishes an annual report that contains a collection of data from accredited programs, and we put that on our website. Here is an example of aggregate data showing the number of students in graduate and undergraduate programs that were employed within 1 year of graduation in a planning related job. For undergraduate students, 69% of graduates were either employed in planning or pursuing higher education in 2019, compared to 64% in 2022. For grad students, 77% were employed in planning in 2019 compared to 79% in 2022. A little increase there. Other data available in our PAB annual report on our website includes domestic, student, and gender enrollment status, international gender and enrollment status, enrollment numbers, and the number of students who graduate per academic year, and as shown above, the student employment by graduating class. Data collected since 2010 is available in a dynamic online database that is searchable by region, state, institution type, or degree level. And it also includes access to faculty data such as domestic and international faculty gender and teaching status, the number of faculty with AICP status, and the student and faculty teaching ratio. Next. So this is the homepage for the PAB website. It is a great tool to find resources on planning programs, training, and data. Some examples of things you can find on our website include, of course, the accreditation standards. We have a section for noteworthy practices that we're very proud of that has highlighted some programs that have undertaken actions to meet the standards that the site visitors and the board have deemed as notable that other people should look at, other programs should look at, I'm sorry. The list of all programs that are currently or formerly accredited by the Planning Accreditation Board, as well as those programs that are pursuing candidacy status, are available under the tab Accredited Programs. There's a section for how to become involved as a PAB site visitor, as well as a list of all current site visitors, separated by education and practitioners, as well as a variety of other data resources, policies and procedures manuals, and presentations related to planning program education, and a calendar of events and upcoming sessions. Next.
All right. we're going to have a couple more questions for you to see what you think. So a question for you, in your experience, which of the education outcomes assessed by PAB is the most important? I'm going to give you a chance for one more question to do your second choice, but do your first choice with this one. So equity, diversity, social justice and inclusion, sustainability, resilience and climate justice, professional ethics and responsibility, general planning knowledge in a global context, planning history and theory, planning law and institutions, urban and regional development, planning process and engagement, analytical skills and tools, or professional communication and leadership skills. So I know with planning, everything's important. You'll want to click everything, but I'm gonna make a choice here. Choose your most important one and know you're gonna get a second choice coming up.
Wait till you see these results, Bonnie.
Okay.
It's exactly what I thought would happen. We'll give
Ooh.
everyone another moment here
Oh,
because I know
okay.
there's a lot of choices to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it and share the results. Everything.
A little bit of everything. But wow, planning process and engagement. So really the top one is that overarching how to plan, how to work with others, how to engage with the public. So that's really interesting. And as someone who teaches planning history and theory, shout out to my 7 buddies that did planning history and theory. Thank you very much. So, okay, let's go to the next question, which is the same thing, but what's your second most? All right. And many of you may remember from your planning history and theory course the old phrase, if planning is everything, maybe it's nothing. It is, planning is everything. That's what's so great about it.
And so hard to explain to your friends and family what you do.
Exactly, because you just say, look out the door.
Right.
I do stuff with that.
Okay, I'll give it another second here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Share our results again.
Okay, well, gosh, so combining the first question and this one, we really know planning process and engagement are the biggies. And then that general planning knowledge in a global context. That's really great. So I actually am kind of heartened that there isn't like a clear winner, because yeah, we do it all. That's what makes planning really great. So we now have time for Q&A, and I will kind of, as somebody who, as an academic, when I was a student at the University of Kansas getting my planning degree, we had a site visit from PAB. So I was interviewed as a student to find out what was really going on. And then I've been a site visitor, and also I've been on the other side, being accredited and writing the self-study report and getting everything ready to make sure that we meet accreditation standards. And I do want to point out that a big thing that accreditation requires of planning programs is you have to have a plan. So, I mean, that's not necessarily something that all accreditation will ask for, but we are planners and we're supposed to plan. So you have to have a strategic plan. And so we have to walk the walk. We've actually got to do plans to then meet our accreditation standards. So, so Christine, do you have some questions wrangled for us?
Oh, we have a lot of questions.
Okay, all right.
And I tell you what, I don't know, I'm feeling silly on this Friday afternoon. I'm coming in hot with our first
Okay.
question.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen for a second. This will stop other screens. Yes. So I'm going to share this. This is from I think the 2021 report. How do we fix this? How do we fix this? You know, we talk a lot in our profession and at, you know, our APA Ohio board about diversity, equity, inclusion, getting more minority planners involved with our organization, involved with the process. And the thing is, it starts here. It starts at the college level. That's where they come in.
Yeah.
How do we fix this? What do we do? And is the Planning Accreditation Board trying to take a role in that? Or is that someone
Yeah.
else's role? And if it is, whose is it? Who do we need
Yeah.
to talk to?
Yeah. I will start off with that. Gosh, the Planning Accreditation Board takes this so seriously because as a program that is in Kansas, we do struggle with diversity. And the PAB board has dinged us on that in the past. And we have tried so hard. It's incredible. Now we've moved the needle. I'll just use the University of Kansas as an example. Our most recent data is we have certainly moved the needle on male female. Our student body right at the moment is 65% female, which is pretty cool. We have also moved the needle above these standards for Native American students. And that's because where we're located is also Haskell Indian Nations University. That's been really helpful. Hispanic students, we've moved the needle on, and students of 2 or more races. But Black, African American, Asian, man, we struggle. And we're doing more with recruiting via internet searches and providing some more scholarship money. But boy, it is hard. And so Linda, in your different site visits and experience, what have you got to contribute to this conversation other than PAB does take it very seriously?
And I guess maybe Linda, after you chime in, if you could give us some examples of how they're taking it seriously, like what are they doing? What can we do to help? Like,
Sure.
How do we move this along?
Well, Christine, I'd like to start by kind of taking the conversation a little bit broader than PAB, because in my opinion, I think it is broader than PAB. It's an issue in the profession. So I know, and I assume that many of the participants on the line are APA members, and they know that the organization has been taking the issue seriously, and it's probably been 10 years or so that the organization has invested in social equity and invested heavily in ensuring that there are programs or resources from the program, from the organization devoted to conferences, training, and any number of areas to address it. But it hasn't been enough, and there's still a lot of work to do. So I would just acknowledge that, and much of the work that I think could be done needs to be done upstream, meaning we can't wait until they're in college and trying to pick a career. They need to be exposed to the fact that the profession exists. And that has been an issue. I think it's getting a lot better, but I think more could be done. And I think it's an obligation for chapters, not just national APA, but I think it's an obligation for chapters and local sections to commit resources to addressing the issue of just networking, engaging, and reaching out to those who are practicing to get them into APA, because some of them are out there, but we don't know, they aren't necessarily engaged in APA or PAB. So I think it's a battle that needs to be engaged on many different fronts. And what PAB has been doing, as Bonnie noted, it is a significant criteria, but it's a challenge in PAB when we do the site visits to, I think that what we've seen historically is that this is a challenging university. So the programs have to decide what diversity means to them, is to be defined in their strategic plan. So there's not a cookie cutter response to what is diversity, because it necessarily needs to be defined by the program's mission and its goals. But one of the ways that PAB, I think, can influence that is in our site visits. When we talk to the head of the university, I think we continue to stress the value and the need for it. So because the funding to, there's a lot of challenge to just fund regular program needs, not just going above and beyond to address the issue of diversity. So we try to encourage the leadership at the university in the programs to commit the resources to recruiting and supporting diverse faculty, not just financially, but in networking and engagement and many other ways. So I hope that addressed the question, but just know that it is a high priority for PAB, and we have been addressing it not just through the standards, but through the site visit and through all of our communications with the program.
Well, and I think we've hit upon how difficult it is to explain to people what the heck we do. And that means that not very many kids grow up going, hey, I'm going to be a planner someday. They just don't know. And so the more that we all can do, APA, AICP, ACSP, and PAB, and all of our planners out there can do to say, hey, we're out here, this is what we do, it's vitally important, and make sure people know about us. Also, I will give a shout out to our Kansas APA chapter. We were the first chapter to send a letter to the AICP Ethics Committee about strengthening the anti-discrimination clause in the AICP Code of Ethics, and to be more welcoming to LGBTQ AI members. And we are so proud of AICP for the new code that was recently updated, and that Kansas played a role in that. So we're doing, our members are doing some good things. It just maybe people don't know about them.
Okay, thank you. This next question, there are several states that don't have any planning accredited schools. Is there a push to target states that have a lack of accredited schools? Is there a push within our conversation that we just had about diversity to target HBCU schools, historically Black colleges and universities? Are you targeting schools right now, whether colleges, universities, whether there's a lack of presence or, a certain type of college, university?
Yeah, I don't know. Jacqueline or Linda, you want to take that?
I'll start with that by saying that in our last meeting, our board has been doing a strategic plan. And one of the things that we realized is that we did need to do more outreach to make sure that the word is out about the value of accreditation, why it's important and helpful and beneficial to a program to be accredited. So as a part of that, we've outlined at least a start doing more outreach and more publicity and just marketing around the value of a program or accreditation. So I think, Christine, a part of that effort would be to look at any program that's not accredited, and that would include in states where there isn't But to answer your question more directly, we have not identified or targeted a specific location. And lastly, we do have several HBCUs that are accredited. And again, as a part of that broader outreach program, we will continue to outreach to more of those programs as well.
Yeah, that was part of our board's strategic planning.
Yep.
And just to show that that planning pays off, this webinar.
Right.
We were like, we need to get out there and tell our story. And so here we are.
Next question, and I didn't see this slide and I haven't had a chance to double up on it, but the question is, does the decline in the number of full-time planning faculty, which I'm guessing that that's a thing, that there's a decline in full-time planning faculty over the years, present a challenge for accredited programs to maintain their accreditation?
It's really interesting. You know, I bet a lot of people are aware of the larger higher education picture, budget cuts, particularly at public universities funded by states. And so, you know, faculty have been shrinking. But the bright side, the bright side is that there's now many more different types of faculty. There are professors of teaching, professors of practice, where your practitioners are brought in and they even get to be on like a tenure track. And PAB has updated their standards so that they're looking for a certain amount of full-time faculty in the planning program, but they're allowing you to be more interdisciplinary and to bring in and have classes taught by, say, a planner in a geography program or a sociology program, communications or public administration, so that you have a core planning full-time faculty. You can reach out to other professors in other programs, but you can also have professors of teaching, professors of practice as well. So that shrinking of full-time faculty is an issue. But bless you, Linda.
Thank you.
But PAB has allowed some more flexibility, and there's just more opportunities for bringing practitioners in as professors of practice to really strengthen and kind of backfill that loss of full-time faculty.
Okay. Leaning into that a little further, I guess. So we're talking about practitioners coming in and teaching classes, and then you have your academics, your researchers, the ones who are, that's their job, you know, they don't, you know, my experience is that the practitioners that teach tend to have AICP, whereas a lot of just the straight academics don't, because they might not feel the value of it. Which, I mean, I guess I get they're academics, you know.
Fair.
Has there ever been a rule, or should there be, or has there been conversation that like a certain percentage of faculty should be AICP, regardless if you work in the field, you know, out in the field as a practitioner or not, just to support AICP as a credential? You know, you're a student and you look, and if your entire faculty, if only 2 of them are AICP, you would think to yourself, well, why should I get AICP? My professors don't even have it. Discussion on that?
Yeah, Linda, do you want to take that?
Well, I will acknowledge that PAB does find value in that, because we find that when programs do have AICP staff or faculty, they tend to stress AICP certification probably more so. And
right.
I don't want to say that there is not a high level of engagement with the chapter when there isn't AICP faculty, because that's not true. But I think to the extent that the faculty is AICP, I think it actually promotes among the students coming out of that program a greater push for them to become AICP certified. I think that those who go through the faculty that go through that process, they see and understand the value, and they do impart it to their students. And it's something that PAB, when we look at a program and they do have a high level faculty that is AICP certified, we like to recognize that. We would certainly recognize that and encourage continued engagement of AICP by the faculty. But there has not been discussion to consider a standard that would require a certain percentage of the faculty to be AICP. We see the value, we recognize it, but it hasn't yet gotten to that next level.
Well, and in the self-study report, you have to document how many of your faculty are AICP.
Right.
So that information is tracked. The board and the site visitors have that in the self-study report. I will note that as a professional development officer for the Kansas chapter, every year there's a PDO meeting at the National Planning Conference, and I'm always a little like amazed and pleased by how many planning professors are professional development officers. Mm-hmm. And so there's some of us out there. And the other thing that APA has done, which has been huge, has been that any student, no matter what program they're in, undergrad, graduate, get a free membership in APA. That is so huge to introducing prospective students to the profession and then getting them lined up to eventually be AICP. So that has been just amazingly beneficial for us to attract students, to get them to know what the profession is and that sort of thing.
This next question, I'm combining several questions. And it's a little bit about, and so I got my graduate degree from Cleveland State, and it was very policy focused. The other two accredited schools in Ohio is University of Cincinnati, and that's very heavy in design. And then the Ohio State University is sort of a blend of the two, I would say. Mm-hmm. But this question is, so I felt like I kind of lacked a little bit of the design, whereas, students from UC were like, we kind of lack the policy end of things. So, and it's like that, no matter what school, they're going to have a focus. But through all of that, is there a trend perhaps of missing the boat on some of the big planning issues, the non-sexy planning issues like rural planning and economic development, and how some of those pieces really impact what we do as planners, but many schools might not even touch it, might not even go there. Even, the idea of public administration and public policy, like these are pretty big items that may not necessarily ever, touch the ears of graduate students in planning programs. Has there been discussion about, kind of making sure that maybe some of those topics are included in accredited programs that aren't currently?
Bonnie, you want to start? I do have some feedback on that, but I want you to start since it's an academic question, but I do have some feedback on that.
Yeah, and gosh, ever since the early 1970s is where you started to see the growth of policy programs. University of Kansas is a policy program. And gosh, whenever I get students that are interested in design, it's, if they haven't had it as an undergrad, by the time they get to the master's level, if they haven't had any design, boy, that's a heavy lift. And so so that's just a comment on the, there's kind of this idea that, why, I could just pick up some design. Well, it's like kind of more than just picking it up on the side. So yeah, there's design oriented programs, there's policy oriented programs. Larger schools can try to hit both. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that PAB does accredit both types, and they both can fit under the criteria. One thing that has changed about PAB, in the past, they would require specializations. So, maybe a specialization in urban design, a specialization in housing or transportation. And now they no longer do that. Schools can decide to do specializations if they would like, or not. There's also a change in education, higher education, graduate education, of doing certificates. And so, for example, at the University of Kansas, you come to our program, it's a policy program, but through the School of Architecture, you can get a graduate certificate in design. Through public administration, you can get a certificate in city and county management, or in nonprofit management. So you can kind of either in a design school or a policy school. Most schools now are going to have some way that you can get a certificate in some sort of specialized area that you're interested in. So hopefully that kind of answers things. And then does that set you up, Linda?
Yes, I would say that we think it's important, and you could see from the criteria that there is, what I talked about it earlier, but the goal is to make sure that planners are getting the fundamental skills and knowledge to practice in the profession. We haven't tackled kind of going deeper than that in terms of those special areas of focus. But what we do as a board is we ensure excellence, because when a program has a particular focus and that level of focus rises to a best practice, PAB highlights it. We talk about it. We have a whole section on our website that highlights best practices among programs. So what I think, we think it's important that not all programs try to be all things to all planners. There's value in having different programs have strength in different areas. Off the top of my head, I know University of Washington, they have a real strong design program in their BE college. Cal Poly Pomona, they're known for practice. I think that's good. It gives students choices in terms of when they know and understand kind of what their focus is. They can self-select and attend a university that focuses in the area where they feel that they'd like to go. So I feel that there's value in having different programs have specialization. And I think PAB is probably right to say our goal is to make sure that there is a standard. And I would highlight that the standards that PAB has, they're a floor. They're not a ceiling. We like to say that, because what we encourage, even though those standards that we expect the programs to demonstrate their compliance with, we encourage them to go higher, and we think it's better, and we recognize and acknowledge when they have exceeded those standards or are doing a really good job. We highlight that and we say, wow, your program has done this really, really well, because we want not just the program and the region to know it, but we want the entire planning community to know when a program is doing really well. That's one of the ways that we support excellence, and that benefits not just the program, but the entire profession. So I just wanted to add that nuance. So no, we haven't talked about doing that, but I think it's a really healthy discussion.
Well, and I will point out that You know, it's kind of the time of year for university rankings to come out. And rankings are fine, but it's really about finding the right program for your interests.
Mhm.
And so looking for an accredited program, you know that those programs, somebody has checked to make
Mhm.
sure that they're doing a good job. And the PAB website has all the accredited programs on it. So it's like one-stop shopping where
Mhm.
you can go to the website, click around, click on the different universities and look at what their strengths are, what their specializations are, what they teach, what the faculty research, and find
Mhm.
what you're really interested in. So if you're interested in rural or small town planning, look for the schools that have strengths in those areas, and you can do that by looking at the Planning Accreditation Board. If you just looked at like rankings, you're going to miss all of those nuances, and you might go to a highly ranked university, but then it doesn't do what you want or what you're interested in. So I really like that and I tell prospective students, hey, even if you don't come to KU, look at the PAB website, shop around, find that place that really fits what you're passionate about.
Thank you. You started to talk about like certificates or like these kind of little mini programs, I guess, within a larger program. And then it made me think, and then I actually saw a question about this. What about community colleges? Has there been any work with them to kind of tee up their kind of program to then, you know, filter kids on to finish the degree, or have just certificate programs at a community college that's in affiliation maybe with a PAB school?
Well, Christine, I was going to say you must have been at our last retreat, our strategic planning retreat. Because
Did I just send you a softball? I did, didn't
yes,
I?
you did. We are absolutely looking at that. I think that one of the things we recognize is that we can do a much better job of getting the word out about, number one, the value of accreditation, spreading the reach, not just to planning programs, you know, and universities that have planning programs. And I'm going back now to what I talked about in the profession. I call it upstream, is getting active and engaged before you get to the college level. And that's where I think the university programs, and frankly, even allied programs outside of pure planning, if you will, to just spread our reach. So we are absolutely looking at community college and allied professions. So if you're outside of planning, technical planning, if you're in ASLA, or if you're in law, potential other allied areas that feed into planning, we're looking at trying to broaden our reach and consider, should we be looking at some kind of accreditation that captures not just planning, but other professions? So all of those things are on the table for us.
Great. Next question. Does the PAB get into politics at all? So that's the question, but to kind of bring it down a level, at least here in Ohio, we're looking at some legislation, and then I recently found out there are other states that are kind of in the same boat. There's kind of a push to remove curriculum that encourages discussion on disadvantaged populations, or talking about equity or justice, like literally removing it from curriculums. Actually tacked onto that bill here in Ohio is also a movement to look into making a 4-year degree a 3-year degree. I don't know why it's tacked on to that. So in situations like this, I mean, that would completely like throw our programs right out. I mean, we might as well just give up and go home, right? And yeah, we're doing at our chapter levels, I'm sure, a lot of advocacy. I'm sure, you know, the local collegiate organizations are also doing advocacy. But can we lean on the Planning Accreditation Board to assist in advocacy when these kind of I'm not going to say ridiculous, but I am going to say ridiculous pieces of legislation come through that literally eats at the core of what we do.
I'll start this one, and I don't know if Bonnie, if you wanted to jump in, or even Jacqueline. So Christine, the first answer is that advocacy is not a part of our mission, and we don't have a policy around that. But I will say the operative response to your question is that we are absolutely tracking it. We're engaged in the discussion. We are aware of those influences because they have the potential to have a profound impact on the business that we're in. And it matters kind of how we respond as not just as PAB, but as a profession, APA, AICP. So we're deeply aware of it. We are tracking it. But because none of the legislative efforts that have been put forward so far, none of them have actually passed. They're all being considered. They're in the process of being reworked. So we're absolutely tracking that, and we'll take appropriate action to the extent that's necessary. That's my short answer to that question.
And I would add to that, on the PAB website in the About Us section, we do have our diversity values statement. And within our accreditation standards surrounding diversity in particular, in the language of the standards, it does say consistent with applicable law and institutional policy. So programs would have to demonstrate why they're not doing things and not just be like, oh, it's just the law. They'd have to show their efforts and why they're not promoting like a climate of inclusiveness, or, you know, why they don't have certain diversity in their program.
Well, and I will add, as all practicing planners know, that cite your Planning in the Face of Power book, and be your planner selves. I think I will. We've dealt with this before. We will deal with it again, and we're planners.
Perfect. And maybe it was Bonnie, you might have mentioned this. It is part of the reaccreditation process for schools. Is there a component of kind of strategic planning, or like where the school is going in the future? You know, so I know that there's a lot of metrics about recent school years and the history, you know, things like that. But can you dive a little bit further into what is expected of PAB schools in terms of their future plans and kind of helping them push? Do you help them push the envelope, or is it just sort of like a reporting out of this is our plan for the next 10, 15 years? Or do you help them, you know, really push the envelope?
Yeah, well, and I think Linda pointed out well that the criteria are a floor, and the self-study report is actually a good excuse to pull together all the great stuff you're doing, and just even for your own program to go, oh my gosh, we're really cool. We're doing all of this stuff. But the big thing is that it does require you to do strategic planning. And in that self-study report, you're expected to look back at your past plans and say what you've progressed on, what you haven't. Explain why maybe you haven't progressed on the things that you haven't, and then to have your goals for the next 5 to 7 years. So it's all that good planning process that we're all supposed to do. But then it is that, you know, just this connection with the larger professional community, APA and AICP, and the Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning. All of them are pushing best practices, looking to the future, being ready for the future. And so all of that is coming together in these accreditation processes for schools to be able to assess themselves, see where they're at, and really set a course for you know, improvement and progress over time, and not just rest on our laurels, but keep pushing.
And to that has APA now for the second year in a row has put out a trends report, I think in conjunction with like what the Lincoln Institute maybe. Is there a component of, is that being pushed? That type of thought, we're the big APA theme is, foresight and looking, and trying to guess what's down the road to prepare for it now. And, I'm just curious to know if those types of documents, which if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google APA trends report and they'll pop up, I promise. But are those types of ideas being taken into account?
Well, it's funny you say that, Christine. I just had students in their last semester do a project where they were tying their neighborhood plan goals to the trends report. So
yeah, I threw you a softball too.
And I'm chairing the task force that's looking at the fourth required AICP credit that right now is sustainability and resilience. We're analyzing the trends report to see whether we should continue with sustainability and resilience or change that to something else. But within, like I said, this is the nice thing about all of the professional planning organizations being pulled together by the Planning Accreditation Board, because as APA pushes on the trends report, AICP pushes on that, ACSP picks up on it, and accreditation picks up on it. And so then the accreditation requirements are keeping pace with and setting the pace for the AICP exam. And so it really is how all of that is coming together, which is just kudos to our profession for doing that.
Great. It's time already. I know, right? Isn't this fun? And we still had a ton of questions left over. But this has been, I told you there would be a lot of questions. I wasn't lying. This has been really great conversation. I did put up in the chat the Planning Accreditation Board's website. It's just planningaccreditationboard.org. And like I said, if you're interested in that trends report, just Google APA trends report. It's going to pop up for you last year and this year. Don't forget to log your CM credits. And I know Bonnie mentioned the sustainability and resilience required credit right now. We actually have a series. All of our S&R sessions are on our YouTube channel. They're actually in a specific playlist, and they're all available on demand. So if you need your S&R credit still for this reporting period, head over to our YouTube channel, and there's like 15 or 20 you can choose from, and you can just view them on demand and get your credits. And that's youtube.com/planningwebcast. And then don't forget to register for all of our upcoming sessions at ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. And I think that's it. And don't forget, we're recording this one. We'll pop it up on the YouTube channel early next week. Thank you, Bonnie and Linda and Jacqueline and APA Kansas for hosting today. And thank you for all three of you and what you all do to try to keep our profession moving. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you
for having us.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Okay.
We'll talk next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.